You're on.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Ad Hoc Committee. Thank you. Starting the owl, Jerry. Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. If I could ask Commissioner Nipper to do a quick invocation.
Yes, ma'am. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for today, Lord. Thank you for blessing us with so much. And we pray for all those impacted by the large amount of rainfall, the first responders, and everyone else that will be out in this weather for the days to come. Lord, thank you for everyone gathered here tonight. Pray for your guidance as we make decisions. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Recognition of the public. No one's here with us today. Motion to approve the minutes from November 19th.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. So no one opposed. Okay. Per the chair, we'll just work to the new business. David, would you like to say any introductory comments?
I think me and Mr. Witt worked on the application at quite some length. I feel it's a really good improvement to the existing application, much more concise for just the nonprofit charitables. And at this point, we haven't really addressed anything for the fire departments, the civic, or the others. But I feel like it's a lot of groundwork was done this last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for your help with all that. What you have in your agenda under new business, it lists everything that's included here. So we've got the resolution that we approved at our last meeting. We have the previous application. So starting on page 5 of your packet, there was a 2-page introduction, and because of the budget cycle and there's 2 sets of instructions in that old application, depending on whether they were a calendar year or a fiscal year agency, and so there's a lot of detail in there. And then as you continue, pages 7 through 11 were the packet that agencies have been using. And then in addition, they had been asked to complete the spreadsheet on page 12. And I don't know if we've talked about this much over the course of our committee, but in talking to several of the nonprofit agencies and looking at the data that we were receiving during budget, I guess you probably at least heard me say this, that spreadsheet wasn't giving us a lot of really good data. It was causing a lot of confusion. Ms. Jessica would affirm that she received a lot of questions as agencies were looking to complete this package. So that in total is what we have recommended now replacing with pages 13 through 15 of your packet. So there's a 1-page introduction which really just summarizes what the resolution that we agreed to, what the direction that gives us going forward. It gives us the timeline, a deadline of October 1st. So depending on when budget is approved, again, we won't release this application until budget is approved, but then to enable us to have a panel review process before the end of next calendar year and then make our allocations early the following year. October 1st is a consistent deadline that we feel like I think we talked about that date too during our last committee meeting. So it also spells out that this is only for our nonprofit charitable organizations. And that at the bottom of the first paragraph, you'll see that the last sentence says, this application is not for use by other nonprofit organizations, including civic institutions, rural fire departments, or government extension agencies, as we define those. In my mind, just a voiceover for that government extension, it's all those things where we have a contract or a statute or a private act or some other kind of guiding requirement. And civic institutions would be those that are tourism, forward, Sumner, things of that nature. So that title page kind of explains it. Pages 14 and 15 are really the meat of the application. And as David said, we worked together to try to get both the language on the cover page as well as these 2 pages to be concise, but really capture the important information along with measurements. And you'll see that these are expandable fields, so they will adjust to fit whatever information is being collected. So along with, the kind of the header level information at the top of page 14, you see the boxes that include the mission of the agency, a summary of their program or service, the impact, their expected impact on Sumner County, asking for how they measure and provide specific measurements and their most recent results, and then a narrative on how the funding from Sumner County will be used. And a lot of times we're looking at, is it a project that they're looking to fund, or is it a part of their general budget? And you see that, a checkbox for that on the top of the next page. What I haven't mentioned is that in the cover page, in addition to this application, we're asking for all their financials, which is something we were already asking for. And the data that I think that spreadsheet was capturing is available to us in their format, in their language, in their budgets, in their financial statements. So that bullet point list that's on page 13, that's all the financial statements that would go with this condensed application. So I think from this we would get a really good picture, but certainly open to input, and I wouldn't doubt that we might have missed something important. So open to your input. David, did you have, I see yellow highlights, or did you have some proposed changes, or is that just
No.
from our original?
If there was any questions, and one thing we do want to point out is several of the nonprofit charitable organizations and the others has made comments several times that they would like to present their 990, which is their filing as part of their financials, because it does tell additional information. So it does ask for their 990 plus, unless things have changed. My understanding is if you don't file 990 for 3 years, you can lose your nonprofit status anyway. So if we're required to make sure they're nonprofit, we probably need their most recent 990s. So that is one additional thing we are asking for.
Good point. Now, my vision for the sum total of all nonprofit agencies would be that we would have 2 cover letters and 2 applications. But we have 3 distinct categories, if you remember back in our resolution. So rural fire, in my mind, it would have a different header page because it's going to have a different deadline. It's going to be in line with our budget process, and so that cover page would define their timelines for the regular budget process. And then their application, I've been trying to get in touch with Joe McLaughlin. I might go another angle because I just haven't been able to connect with him. But I'd like to get some language from grant applications that they typically use in the fire industry, because I know that there's things, whether it's ISO rating or anything that's specific to the people they serve, the extent and how they would describe, their scope of responsibility. So I'd like to use some of their language and create hopefully a similarly condensed application, but make sure that we capture data that's relevant to their industry. And then also, I haven't really pointed this out, but one of the requirements of any agency that receives money from us is that they have to file with the clerk's office, and it comes to the finance department, a standard format that is issued by the state of Tennessee. It's a mid-year report of their financials. So the fire departments have to do that no matter what, and so we're going to try to leverage that bit of it as well to simplify what we're asking them to provide in addition. And when I say 2 applications, 2 cover pages, that cover page that defines the timeline and process for the rural fire would be the same cover page, I would think, that we could use for all the other civic and government extension agencies. So your Tennessee Rehabilitation, it's government extension, and the fact that we have an agreement with them where we offset the rent payment, and so we have that contract with them. That would be government extension agency, tourism, forward Sumner. We can go through the whole list if we want to, but they would be on the same timeline as rural fire. So I'd see that we would have the same kind of cover letter to define their process. But then I think that those government extension agencies and civic organizations can use this same 2-page application that we've proposed, or with any modifications. So Jessica, we've been hammering this through. We want it, on one hand, this feels a little bit more complicated because we're going from this, one set of general information that everybody used to something that's a little bit more specific. But I think after we get through this first year, it will be a big improvement. And so, while it's not entirely super streamlined and super simple, it's more appropriate for the different agencies, I think. I'm not totally clear on next steps as far as the resolution. I know that we had a really packed budget and finance agenda last month. Mm-hmm. So as far as the resolution and our overall proposal, what would be the next steps as far as bringing this forward to the commission? for adoption.
I mean, and the thing is, it's kind of a twofold thing, because obviously it's 90% budget component, but it's also kind of a policy change. So my recommendation would be that in January, David put it on the budget agenda and we would put it on the legislative agenda, so that it hits
Both
as many
committees.
people as it can, but also too, to kind of take it through both paths, because it does really
Yes,
go
agree.
with both paths.
I think that'd be great. Okay.
Another thought is we're getting ready for the impending budget too, so
Mm-hmm.
we may want to discuss tonight, even though we have the old application that isn't quite what we want. But generally, within the next 2 weeks, we have it on the website. We probably need to try to get something on the website for the next 2 weeks, especially for the fire departments, the civic,
Well,
the organizations you want following the original plan.
And let me say this, I would not have a problem with the new application. Don't use the old application, get rid of it. Put the new application on the website with a big watermark across it that says to be approved or draft, but tell them this is the information you're going to be having to collect.
Well, right now, what we've got, this new application wouldn't be used until October 1st.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it's in the and then the old ones for like the civic, the fire department, Ford, Sumner, the other group that wouldn't fall under this, we need something in the interim that is gonna go through the.
Okay, and that's fine.
Right, that's what
Well,
we're saying.
So let
pretty
me,
soon.
actually, what I was saying though is I think that this new application could be used for those civic and other government extension agencies. We just wouldn't use this application, this new proposed application for rural fire.
So does the committee wanna just get us to go ahead and work one up, and then we could bring it to budget?
I mean, you're gonna be, it's gonna be January before you can.
What we usually do at the first
Yeah.
or second, we're talking the budget this month will be January 13th, so if we did that, we would be updating, we could bring a potential new application for these other entities to budget on January 13th. If they adopt it, then we can post it on the website on the 14th.
Okay, but
'Cause this
but
one's been-
realize that commission meeting is not until
It's still
the
the
fourth
fourth Monday in January.
So it's the end of January before you would get it.
Right.
And personally, and let me just say this, I don't know that you necessarily have to have full commission approval for
That's what I was
an
kinda wondering.
application process. I mean, if you wanna do that, you can. If this committee wants to create one and say, this is it, we're blessing it, go forth,
That's fine.
let David do that, and then if somebody comes back and says, hey, I didn't get to vote on that, then we take it back and do that. But this isn't, we're not
Right.
creating something written in stone here. This is just an attempt to figure out a better way to collect stuff.
Collect data.
So maybe an ideal is to have me and Ms. DeWitt to develop one for the other
For the rural fire.
organizations,
For
bring it
all of
to,
them, and just get
bring
it
it to
up.
budget. We'll bring it
get
to budget on the 13th, if they approve it, post it on the 14th.
Okay, and that's fine, and then forget my legislative idea, that's,
Well, then after that,
Yeah.
you'd want to see in like your, resolution and possibly on it.
well,
Yeah,
I think ultimately you can do that, yes, but at the same time, I think the most frustrating thing for any organization is to be given multiple sets of rules and multiple
Right.
things to fill out. We need to give them, okay, going forward, throw that away, here's the rules we're gonna follow.
Yeah.
Right, and then with the March 1 deadline approaching, if we got the 14th, that would give them 45 days. It's pretty close to what we used to
Mhm.
give them. I just do not think it would be a good idea to push it to February, because they would be so truncated.
Then
Our
they'd be-
timeline might
right.
be impossible.
I think we need to, if the application's out there, like the old application, we just need to remove it
Mhm.
and then not put anything out there until the budget committee on January 13th approves it. I think to Ms. Dennon's point, I don't think the full commission has to go and approve it. But I think the budget committee would need to, since they're the ones that are gonna be receiving.
I think they
Right.
definitely need to have a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
I agree.
My thought process is to do something, as Mr. Witt says, similar to the nonprofit charitable, except we change the timeline to meet the budget timeline.
Right.
And then maybe something a little more vague this first year on your measurements, because we don't really have them developed yet.
Mm.
And that way it would allow them to go ahead and at least get their applications in for fire, all the civic organizations,
Right.
Ford, Sumner, and whoever else.
It's really kind of what I was envisioning, that if we have a collective consensus here about, this is the right direction to go, and that the application doesn't have any major issues from this group's perspective. I thought we might be able to do just what we're saying, you know, it's not necessarily a whole policy statement. Yeah,
The question on the agencies will be eligible for no more than 2,500 in the first year, so I understand that. And just to clarify on this next part, or a 2,500 increase in subsequent years, does that mean that there's a cap of 5,000, or is this saying that every year it could increase another 25, ongoing and ongoing?
that's
I'm trying to remember
the latter. The latter is what the intent is,
Okay.
and I think that that's been sort of the guideline in the past, although I don't think there's any agencies that fall into this category that are above 5,000. So,
Okay.
Can we put the word, maybe if we put the word each after that in, that would make it clear. Because
Or
every
in
first year,
any, yeah.
or a $2,500 increase in each subsequent year, or something. I don't know, maybe just look at the language a little bit, but.
I
A
don't know, I
2,500
think you
increase
also need to
in
put
any
language in there
subsequent.
that everything is always subject to budget restrictions, and
yeah.
these are just
Guidelines.
kind of benchmarks, guidelines, you know,
Yeah.
hopes, prayers.
Try to create something that can stick.
The application says that, I believe. The application says it quite well, it's after but I'm not sure about the resolution.
So is this application a Word document or Excel?
It's
The Word?
currently developed in Word, yes. But we can make it fillable in PDF.
It is.
So for
fillable.
agents-
The white one's
Yeah.
not, but the old one is.
So along those lines, is there anything that we could capture this data?
A little programming to create a database.
Well,
That would be nice.
If it's something, because, it'd be nice to be able to, they're filling this out, and for us to really
Evaluate.
capture, there was gonna be someone that's gonna be retyping it all or doing something, I don't know, but I don't know what the answer is, but if it was something where, an online form where they could just fill it out, and then all of a sudden it's in some type of database. I don't know if Mr. Carey has something that,
We can talk to
They
it
can,
and see what
you
we
know.
can buy.
and I don't think we need to do it for this time, I'm just thinking further down the road, because
Yep.
because it's good to have it all on paper, but then it's just, what do you,
Right.
The other thing is the
Okay.
application says attach pages as needed. I anticipate, and like Mr. Witt, these may only be that large, but they may require a significantly larger area to describe some of those.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure it would.
So we're thinking it's probably will be much larger than that when it's finished.
Mhm.
Some will be small, some will be large.
You're talking about something like Google Forms. Of course, it's not going to lay out like this, but we do that for our contests that we have however many entries for, and it just gives you a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And each column takes
Every-
the,
Yeah, it just reads across in the spreadsheet, this group, this is whatever, and all on one page, and it's automatic, but you can't get it in this form for that.
Would you like
Just
us
like
to
when-
request that to Mr. Carey?
If you would, just ask me if there's something, because, if we're going down, if we're going through and trying to compare, if we got a limited amount of funding and we've got X number of requests, having something that's in some type of file where we can sort and filter high to low from a value standpoint,
If we
the
make
higher
it-
the value,
If we make it a public, forward facing where they can enter this and it's accessible, that even on these committees or even as a commissioner, you could go back and look at this year's and last year's and the year before.
Mhm.
If we can get the software to the database and the staff to.
The only thing that can get scary though is, and this is where Dan's right, some of these people really want to tell us a story. And I was working on one recently with some research I was doing, and this box just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was in this tiny little print because there was a whole lot more. It wasn't just a yes, no, it was a but for, and it messed up the whole pagination of everything.
That's something we want to get Mr. Dennis to see what kind of software where they can have something look similar, but they actually enter it into a database where we can re-access it. And it makes up another good point. We have a thing where it's available to the public.
I mean,
We
that's,
can make it forward-facing available to the public, to commissioners, and whoever to look at all this stuff.
and they've got to realize, and they've known this, but I do think we need to remind them again, this is public record, and it's open to, once they present it to us, it's open to the public, and I can't imagine there's anything they've got that's state secrets, but they need to remember not
Yeah.
to tell us something they don't want everyone
But-
to pay the newspaper.
If Mr. Dennis doesn't have the staff or the capability, because you have especially with the software, do you want me to go ahead and have him to inquire the cost of actually getting it created? Is
Yeah,
that we
it is-
could link? I
yeah.
think it would be very, in the long run, a very advantageous thing for the county to have this.
Yeah, just have that discussion with them, and, man, we don't need to slow any of the process down, because we're getting into the first quarter or whatever, the next cycle, but, yeah, just have that conversation with him if you don't mind, and then he may know of something that may be a good solution.
Yep. United Way, uses a process similar to what we're doing, where, all the amount of money is known on the front end, when they complete their annual giving, and then they have, applicants, and they go into a database, and all of that information is viewable, and it kind of looks like this when you go into the database. It's set up with columns and forms, and you can go through, go into one application, and you can see all their attachments, all their budget, and 990s, and all that stuff that's attached, and then go back out and go into each applicant. So I know software, like that exists. I don't necessarily think theirs is proprietary. It might be, but it also,
Something to look into.
yeah.
I don't think we need to spend a lot of money on it, because
No, I agree.
but
Long run, it would be very advantageous. It's probably worth some, to be honest. Because you could think right now, if we'd have been doing it for the last 20 years, you could pull back the last work.
How much work Jessica wouldn't have had to do trying to.
Well, no, I'm saying,
Yeah.
think of all the stuff you could go and you could do a search on this entity's name, and you could see their 990s, and which we didn't require, but you can see it for 20 years. You'd have 100% of what happens.
yeah.
And that's, I think that's what our responsibility is as far as our taxpayers. When we are looking at allocating money to nonprofit agencies, we need to know that those agencies have achievable, realistic, that they have goals and that they are accountable to
He's talking about this stuff.
reaching those
We,
objectives.
to make sure Mr. Baker does understand, like where we, for instance, do our expenditures, we do have all that stuff attached in Munis, as she was pointing out. We've been doing that since you've been here, because I've started it several years ago. But we don't have something, as you're saying, where you actually directly enter the database and the public can view it or commissioners, so.
Yeah.
But we do have it in a format that's not quite to that extent.
I encourage you guys to take, if you want to go through this with more of a fine tooth comb subsequent to today's meeting, but before the budget meeting on the 13th. You're welcome to do that if you haven't had a chance to scrutinize it. I think that we can, using this approach that we've discussed as far as getting it, giving budget a chance to review it on the 13th and then putting it on our website on the 14th.
So for the budget committee on 13th, are we thinking that we'll have something for the
For rural fire?
the rural fire and the
I am.
government extensions?
I'm hopeful.
So, do we need to meet again, or can I make a motion just to let you handle that?
I think you could make that motion.
I think that's,
and
I think that's fine. I think that's fine. Just
Yeah, 'cause I don't-
I'd let the finance director,
Right.
and the chairman of the committee.
Work on to get you
Yes.
for the budget.
I feel
committee.
confident in y'all's ability to
continue this.
take it through the finish
Momentum.
line. But no,
That would be
so
helpful.
do we need to vote on this, on item D, or what are we?
Really,
Do we need to vote on
the new
anything right now?
business, maybe these aren't all new business. The new business is really the application. It's pages 13 through 15. And so we could do a motion to accept that as a committee
Okay.
in its
Motion.
format.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Send C, D, and E to budget. Because E's where it says discussion, you could actually send that on to budget.
Oh, okay.
That way you'd send your application when you've got your resolution and then a proposed application for E. If you did it that way.
So group, I'll make a motion to group and approve C, D, and E and move into budget, January 13th meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who's seconded that?
Shelley.
I didn't hear it.
Sorry. All right, great. Thank you all. I'm glad we got this
Good job.
wrangled. And we didn't meet for another hour.
Motion
Final motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank
I
you.
will stop the owl.
Website.